Hello, and welcome to the virtual Fairfield Museum. The museum is closed right now to the public, but we are working to come to you through virtual means so that you can learn a little bit about the history of the town of Fairfield right from the comfort of your own home. My name is Walt Matis. I work at the museum. My title is Program and Volunteer Coordinator, which means that when we are open to the public and we're doing programs, my job is basically to put together programs and make sure that we have docents and other individuals to help make sure those programs run correctly. Today, I am here at the Burr Homestead here on Old Post Road. And today we're going to be talking about the Burr family and the connections to this particular location. So the town of Fairfield is settled originally in 1639 by Roger Ludlow and a group of individuals. But by about 1644, we start to see first large influxes of individuals. Probably the biggest in that window is going to be a group from Concord, Massachusetts, that are going to come under Reverend Jones. There's roughly 20 families connected to that group. But also in 1644, two gentlemen named John and Jehu Burr will both come here to Fairfield. Now, they're coming from actually Agawam, or today Springfield, Massachusetts, and they're already fairly wealthy individuals. And so when they come here, part of the way we recognize the fact that they are wealthy and considered fairly important is the location of this particular structure and the property. So they will purchase two properties, but this property in particular is the one we're talking about today, and its proximity to what at that time would have been the common, or what we today call Town Hall Green. And that space is only probably about 200 to 300 yards from where I'm standing right now. So they were able to get their property, their lots, the two lots, very, very close to what would have been then the very center of town, what we might today call prime real estate. So they get very involved in town politics. We do know that Jehu Burr actually serves as a townsman, which is a representative for the town Fairfield Town Council, at least 13 times in his lifetime that he spends here. So, you know, he's very involved. On top of that, he's also the deputy to the Connecticut General Court, which basically means he's a representative of the town of Fairfield to the Connecticut Assembly, to the Connecticut General Court. So he will pass away about 1690 in that window, and he will pass the property on to his son Peter Burr, who also is involved very much in town politics. He will become a major in the town militia. He's also a judge in the Fairfield Probate Court, and he will build the first structure on this site somewhere around 1720. Some things dated as early as possibly 1700. Some say closer to the early 1730s. So, but somewhere in that window is the first structure that is going to be here. And it's considered at the time a mansion. It's a fairly large structure from what little we know about it. And then he will pass that house and property, roughly 20 acres plus the house, to his son Thaddeus Burr. Thaddeus Burr is a judge in Fairfield, as well as, once again, being representative of the Connecticut legislature and other political roles that he will play. And then he will pass, in 1755, the property will pass to Thaddeus Burr II. And so he will receive that in 1755. In 1759, he will marry a young lady from Fairfield, Eunice Denny, who will become Eunice Denny Burr. And they will live in the structure that was built in like I said, roughly 20, through the early part of their life. Now, Thaddeus Burr is very involved, once again, in politics, and he serves on a number, he's a selectman, he serves as a representative to the Connecticut General Assembly. He's also High Sheriff of Fairfield County. He's also part of the Council of Safety, and that's important because in that window that he and Eunice are living here, the rumblings of the American Revolution are beginning. The protests, various taxes and other things are slowly coming together and creating issues, and he's a part of that. He's actually working with that. So he will become very involved. He's going up to Hartford often. But we know that one of the big events that's going to happen here is on the 22nd of April of 1775, word is going to reach here about 8:30 in the morning, fairly early, from Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, that the American Revolution had broken out about 3 days before. So the word reaches here first. Now, the interesting thing is that some of the first people to be here following that event is indeed a gentleman by the name of John Hancock and another gentleman by the name of Samuel Adams, and they're actually on their way to the Continental Congress, and they're actually here. Actually, they were escaping originally the events at Lexington and Concord, but they are also on their way there, and so they are here in that window of those early stages of the American Revolution. And then later, Dorothy Quincy, fiancée to John Hancock, as well as his Aunt Lydia Hancock, will come and stay here with Thaddeus and Eunice Burr for the period, because they can no longer stay in the Boston area. John Hancock is a wanted man, and ergo anybody connected to him is somebody that the British are looking for. So in 28th of August of 1775, John Hancock will return here, and he will actually marry Dorothy Quincy at the location, and they will be married by Reverend Andrew Elliott, who's minister at First Church Congregational at the time. So they will be married here, and he will eventually return to the Continental Congress, but Dorothy will stay here for a while, and Aunt Lydia also. And unfortunately, Aunt Lydia will actually pass away here in Fairfield and be buried in the old burying ground, as opposed to in Massachusetts, where most of the Hancocks are actually buried. So so in 1779, July of 1779, the British come into Fairfield, and although Eunice Burr gets a letter of protection, it's ignored, and unfortunately the original house that was built in 1732 is burned down, is destroyed at the same time that many other structures in this area are actually destroyed. The structure that we see here, at least the core of it, the original, is rebuilt about 1790, and we know that the Burrs are basically renovate one of the structures. We believe it was a storehouse on the property, and they live in it for almost 10 years while they're working to repair the home. One of the great stories about the repair of the home is of course, one of the friends of Thaddeus Burr is John Hancock, and John Hancock offers to help rebuild the structure, but he insists that it should be built in the same fashion as his home in Quincy, Massachusetts. So that does happen, and it is rebuilt. We don't know that it's exactly the same as John Hancock's home, because we believe they use pretty much the same foundation, the same footprint, so it may have been modified slightly, but we do know that relationship and that connection was there. So the structure is rebuilt then about 1790, and the Burrs will live in it. Thaddeus Burr II will die in 1801. And his wife Eunice will pass away in 1805. At that time, it's going to pass to a gentleman by the name of Gershom Burr, who is the nephew of Thaddeus and Eunice, and they will they had been taking care of him. So Gershom's father had been brother to Thaddeus, and so they when Gershom's father passed away, Thaddeus had continued to take care of him, and then left the structure to him. in 1828, it will pass to Elizabeth M. Jones. It'll pass out of the Burr family after almost 5 generations of ownership by the Burr family of the property. Elizabeth Jones is married to a gentleman by the name of Obadiah Jones. Now, Obadiah is actually lives in New York, but Elizabeth is actually a Roland. She was actually from Fairfield. In fact, her father's home was actually just up the road a little bit more from here. And so she was definitely from Fairfield. And but Obadiah comes to live here. And he's known as the Flour King, so he runs grist mills in New York and other places, and does very well during in particular the period of Civil War. And at some point during their ownership, we believe in the 1840s or 50s, is when the pillars are added to the front. And there was actually only 2 stories originally, and it had a gambrel roof when it was rebuilt in 1790. And that was taken off, and they actually added a 3rd floor. So they changed the house at that time to fit the times and the styles that prevailed. And they will live in it, Obadiah will live in it till 1889. In 1876, he gives it to his 2 oldest daughters. But he and his wife at that time get lifetime tenancy, so they live in it until 1889. And then then his daughters will take it over. And then in 1914, it actually is purchased by DeVere H. Warner and his second wife, Flora. And they will move into the structure at that time. And they actually add small wings to it and some other changes that they make, including a large sun porch on the back, that while they're in the structure. Now, DeVere Warner is part of the Warnaco story in Bridgeport, Connecticut. His father and uncle had started that company, and he was part of that corporation. So when he passes away, his wife Flora continues to live in it until 1958. And in 1958, when Flora passes away, it sits sort of in a probate kind of situation. And in 1962, the town of Fairfield will actually purchase this particular structure and its property. And until roughly 1976, it is actually considered what's known as Town Hall Annex. So it was actually, there was what we today call Old Town Hall, and then other town offices were actually in the Burr homestead. The property itself is often discussed. There's 2 copper beeches that a lot of people like to admire. They're about 141 years old. And so, hello. As well as the gardens. Now, the gardens were once featured in 1939 in a publication, a design of the gardens here at the home, which at that time belonged to the Warners, was actually in a publication from the Garden Club of America. So the gardens were quite fancy and enjoyed. So today, it still belongs to the town. It's still a town property. It's managed by the Fairfield Museum, and it is a rentable property. So it is someplace where if you were looking to have a function, be it a wedding or a party or some sort of celebration, it is certainly a place to have it. It is also the location of many holiday festivals here in town that happen right here. That are, people come from all over to enjoy and take part in. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Where's Walt? As I mentioned before, the museum right now is not open to the public, but if you wish to help out, we really appreciate it. Membership, donations are greatly appreciated. And you can go to our website at fairfieldmuseum.org to learn more about that. So once again, I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much. Take care. And I hope to see you soon on the History Trail.